Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be talking about the bump out for the parking sensors. Now, last episode I said that this is what we were going to be covering today, and here we are. Um, what I originally wanted to do was make a temporary form for the inside of the bump out that I could fiberglass around and remove the form from the inside. That unfortunately did not work out. The complexity of the shape here really was difficult to make a template that I could get, accurate. Um, if you've been following the build, then you have seen me use note cards and aluminum tape numerous times, to make a temporary form. That was originally the plan for this. And like I said, it just did not go as planned. And, it happens. You can have all the best laid plans, but sometimes when you get right down to it, it just doesn't work out. So I kind of had to switch gears. And instead of doing a temporary form, I decided to go with a permanent structure. Now, keeping in the world of composites, fiberglass, and resin, there are some things that you can use and some things that you can't. I chose to use wood. If you are familiar with like RC planes, even boat construction, then you will know that wood is used in composites quite often, namely balsa. What I decided to use was essentially toothpicks, and we're going to show how I did everything to get to this point. The other thing that I want to talk about real quick is that this shape right now is kind of mirroring the bullet shape on the center of the bumper. And I've had a couple people make comments saying that this shape doesn't look like that, or it doesn't really go with anything else on the car. And again, when we're talking about making something from scratch like this, you have to remember that we're talking about three dimension, and when I think of three-dimensional things in the world of fabricating, I build from the inside out, meaning that the finished product will not look like this. But I needed to create a shape that would accommodate the mounting bracket. So what I'm going to be doing is building up fiberglass around this shape so that I can hand sand it and then change the way it looks in the end. So again, just because it looks like this right now doesn't mean that this is how it's going to look in the final stages. So I just kind of wanted to make that clear. So right now what we're going to do is get into a series of videos that kind of demonstrates all the steps it took to get to this point. After this point, I am going to be doing another layup on this panel. I am not going to be showing that. You've seen me lay up multiple panels at this point. It's the same process. I'm going to be, filling in this section with a split right here at the wing. This whole section will be fiberglass. The only real difference is this is going to be a 3-stage layup for me. This little piece right here, I could technically lay my glass over it and I could make it work. But when you have a section like this where it kind of bumps out, if you can see that nice little hump there, it's just easier to do a separate piece over it. So, like I said, I'm simply going to be doing the wing first, then I'll do the main body of the panel here. And then when I'm done, I'm going to do a final layer of fiberglass over this piece. This is going to be a little bit different than the rear. Because I'm shaping it, I have to account for material thickness, to get the sensor to protrude or sit, pretty much where I want it. But I also have to build up kind of a mound all the way around so that I can sand it correctly. So it's going to be a little bit of a trick in the end to get it done, but it'll come out the way I want it. And that's pretty much where we are right now. So let's go ahead and take a look at those videos. And after that, we'll talk about what we're getting into next. So the first real step was to create the shape. And you can see I simply laid out, some lines and was able to create the pattern to cut out. The original fiberglass that I used was only 1 ounce matte, and it was about the thickness of a note card, so cutting it was pretty easy. I wouldn't recommend using a saw blade or anything, that's going to be jarring to the fiberglass because it is so thin here that, it would actually just break. So what I'm actually using is just a simple razor blade, and I'm just taking my time scoring through the fiberglass. It takes several passes, but it'll cut really nice and clean, and it's a really nice way to do it if you're trying to get an exact shape. For my straight lines, I already had everything lined up, so it was just a matter of putting up a straight edge and dragging with a razor blade. Again, just scoring through it several times until it broke all the way through. So what I'm doing here is testing how far I can move the fiberglass, and all I'm really doing is putting my straight edge on my bend line, and I wanted to determine if I could get the inch clearance that I wanted without actually having to score the fiberglass. My next step was to measure back 3/4 of an inch, and that is where I'm going to put my round rod, and that is going to be the support for the fiberglass. Here I'm scoring the fiberglass. I determined I was not able to get enough movement out of the glass, so I'm just going to make a couple passes here until I get enough flexibility in the fiberglass that I can get the clearance that I want. I don't want to actually cut this off because that sensor hole has been predetermined and I don't want to lose the location. Here I'm getting the clearance I want. What I'm doing with the drill bit here is just slightly drilling into the fiberglass. I'm going to be doing a couple holes and I'm moving my drill bit back and forth to create like a gully that the round rod can actually sit in. I do not want the round rod sitting on the surface. I want it kind of buried into the fiberglass a little bit just to make my life a little bit easier. So all I'm going to be doing is moving the drill bit back and forth, and you can see right there, it's just going to make like a little bit of a divot. So here we are, I popped out the fiberglass and you can see my support rod. That will give me my inch clearance. And that's how it will look. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is actually attaching the round rod to the fiberglass. And what I'm going to be using is just a little bit of epoxy. I do not want to use a lot here. I do not want to cause any kind of mounding that would interfere with the toothpicks being able to be stacked. Now, the reason that I used a piece of metal round rod here and not just a toothpick to start is that I wanted something that was structurally sound. Obviously, a toothpick, not exactly the best idea to hold this thing in place. So I just used this round rod to make sure that, if I did bump it or anything, it wasn't going to break a toothpick and I was not going to have to start all over. What I'm doing here is using my pinstriping tape, and I'm simply laying down on the predetermined line that I made to create the shape. And the idea here is that I'll be able to use this painter's tape as kind of a backstop for the toothpick. When I put the toothpick in place, this will help prevent it from sliding, and it's also going to be a really good guide so that I can make sure that as I'm stacking the toothpicks, I'm going in a straight line and that I'm going around the radius in the way that I want. Now I'm actually moving on to installing the toothpicks, and what I'm using is the Weldwood contact cement. The reason that I use the contact cement and not the epoxy is because the contact cement is very sticky, whereas the epoxy is very liquidy. So by using the contact cement here, it will help hold the toothpicks in place and they will not slide around on me, so I can just continue to work. Little tip is if you have like a can of this stuff and it's kind of older, kind of hardened a little bit, that works even better because it's more like a rubber cement, so that it really, really is sticky. You can see all I'm doing is applying a good layer to both surfaces that I want to make contact with my toothpicks. And then I'm going to just simply spread it around the toothpick and put it into place. So to save a little bit of time here, I'm just going to speed up the video until we get to the end so you can see the entire process. So after the contact cement solidified, I just went ahead and cut the toothpicks off with a little saw blade. It was very easy to do. And the next thing I'm going to be doing here is just simply sanding everything down. I want to level out the toothpicks with the fiberglass. I definitely do not want to leave any, high edges that would kind of stick up through the fiberglass when I go to lay this up. Now I'm just going to do a little shaping here. I'm taking off any of the contact cement that has kind of dried on. I'm also taking the toothpicks down a little bit, starting to do a little bit refinement on the shaping of it. Really the big thing here was the inside of the bump out, and that was to accommodate the mounting bracket for the parking sensor. And like I said, the shape was kind of dictated by that bracket. But right now, this is just the base of where we will be going with it. So now that everything has been sanded down, I'm going to add some epoxy, and that is going to be around the bottom edge. That is going to kind of fill in any gaps between the toothpicks. I don't want to have my resin flowing in the inside. I want to, seal that off. So this is going to be the best way to, seal these edges up and make sure that that resin doesn't penetrate. Again, I'm just going to speed everything up to save time so you get the idea of exactly what I did. So now that the epoxy has cured, I am actually going to be doing my layup for this piece. And you can see I have my fiberglass mat sitting there off to the side. Now this is only 1.5 ounce mat. I did not want to use my 2 ounce mat because it's substantially heavier and it's a lot more difficult to work with. So the 1.5 ounce will give me a good base to start on. And I also had to account for the ounce mat that I had already laid down. So technically, with this part here, I have 2.5 ounces at the base. Now that's kind of important because the entire outside of the panel, I'm only doing 4 ounces of mat to start. So I'm already, over halfway in material thickness in some sections. So I kind of have to be careful in how and where I'm actually adding my fiberglass mat. You can see I have some lines drawn on my fiberglass, and that is basically where I'm tucking it into the edge there, where the panel and the bump out actually meet. You can see I also have torn everything instead of cutting, so that when I fold things down and when I blend back to the panel, there's no visible seams. This is a pretty straightforward layout for me. It's just going to be, a lot of wetting it out with my chip brush, and then in the end I'll go back over it with my roller. A lot of times when I'm doing parts that have to fold over each other, I will tear it, but I will also cut small slits into the fiberglass just to help it relax a little bit. I've honestly never had a problem with anything cracking, and it's always been very easy for me to spread and blend the fibers once they release from the glue, and get a really nice uniform finish when I've used this method. Again, I'm just going to speed everything up so you get the idea of what it took for me to do this layup. And this is what they look like after the layup. So that really is what it took to create those bump outs for those parking sensors. And like I said, the original idea was to use, aluminum tape and note cards, but using these toothpicks worked just fine. Structurally, it's going to be a very strong, part. I'm not really concerned with that. It will blend out. I'll be able to shape it, and it'll turn out just fine. Let's see. Next episode, we are going to get into actually cleaning up all the panels that we've laid up now. And what I mean by that is cleaning up the outside edges. And right here, you can see, down in here, you can see all these strands hanging off this round rod. What I'm going to have to do next is actually fiberglass the inside of all these panels to completely encase this foam and to completely encase all the metalwork. Now that's going to be a little bit, not too difficult. The only real trick is going to be I want to wrap my fiberglass from the back onto the front. And I can't really do any of this stuff while it's on the car. And like I said, that is why I actually fiberglass the outside first. It's holding this shape now. So as the panels come off, we're going to throw them on the bench. I'll be able to, work the insides. The idea is here, originally these base panels I made out of fiberglass. And what I'm going to have to do is lay my mat on the inside and actually join that mat to the fiberglass base panel. And that will actually, create that full encasement that I'm going for. So that's what we are going to be getting to next episode. And again, if you have any questions about what I've done on this episode or previous episodes, please reach out. We've had a lot of new subscribers, and I just want to say thank you for that. A lot of really good comments, a lot of really great questions. I've actually had a few suggestions on methods too, some of which I've already known about, some I have not. So, I have to say I'm really enjoying the interaction here. And, like I said, if you have anything to say, please reach out. As always, thanks for watching.